Hi, this is Tommy D on Behind the Mic, where we get to chat to people and find out what's going on in and around the city. And today's guest is Tony Justice from Magna Carta. Tony, good morning.
Good morning, Tommy. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm very fine, thank you.
Well, you're very big as well.
Well,
in the city. In and around the city. Magna Carta is, most people know Magna Carta is a legal company. Mm-hmm. Just to make it absolutely clear, Tony isn't a lawyer because only Thais can practice law in Thailand, unless they pass to do their exams here. But he is the managing director, I think, of Magna Carta.
Well, basically, I'm the liaison officer for the foreign customers so they can be understood what their problem is.
How long have you worked there?
17 years.
So you know more about it than most people do.
I know quite a bit.
Tony, got you here today because one of the things that you started doing and finding more and more with COVID is this idea of people dealing with lawyers online where they don't even have to come into your office. Tell me about that.
Well, it seems a lot of people think that when they do a job with a lawyer, they have to sit in front of them and there's many things that they have to sign. But nowadays, everything seems to have moved online. There's certain ways like Zoom, Line, WhatsApp. We can video chat the customer. If the customer's overseas and he needs to sign something, we can email him the documents. He can print them out, sign them in front of a notary public lawyer and send them back. So pretty much, even though the world's a different place, business can still carry on, but it's just in a different way. A little bit more complicated, a little bit more time consuming, but you can get to the end.
That's got to suit a lot of people who can't get to Thailand right now.
Yeah, well, one of the main jobs people are doing now is where they've bought a condominium and they need to sign off on it before they pay the final payment, and they can't get here to sign off. And so what they're doing is that they're looking for people. We have somebody, an engineer, that can go round there, can check all the faults, can sign everything off. So again, even though they can't get here at the moment, or if they get here, they've got to quarantine for the 14 days, they can still finish the problem that they have to sort by doing things online.
Interesting, you're talking about condos. And today's news is that there is a huge group that has applied to go under bankruptcy protection. Now, this is they're probably not the only ones, but these are one of these groups that were selling condos or selling rooms, however they wanted to do it, on a massive scale to the public, where they were guaranteeing payments which were way above what you could get with the bank. So a lot of people were taking their savings, investing it with these companies. There's been several of them, with the guarantee, absolutely in writing guarantee, that they're going to get 8 or 10 or 12%. And at the end of some period, the company is going to buy back their condo or their room.
Yes.
Now, this is becoming more and more common where people are complaining. You see it on social media that they're losing money. They're not getting their money because it appears that these companies have actually depended on cash flow to keep themselves going.
Well, I think the cash flow is that their, what they say, rental guarantee is dependent on them being able to rent the unit out. And if you look at the figures, probably they would only have to rent the unit out for 4 or 5 months a year to be able to pay back the money they have to pay back to that client. But the problem being is at the moment, there's no rental market out there at all.
Right.
But so there's no cash flow.
So you don't think it's also because they were relying, some of these companies, on deposits and payments from new customers to fund old customers' deals? Robbing Peter to pay Paul?
I don't know. It sounds like that, but until you look at it, you can't really go into that. At the end of the day, this particular group was just doing rental guarantees. So as long as they had people to rent the units, they had the money to pay them. Where it all crashed is when there's no one to rent it, people still want their money because it wasn't touted that we will rent your unit and give you your money. It was touted we will give you the money every year regardless whether we rent the unit
absolutely.
Or not. But of course they were reliant on renting the unit.
And a lot of people are relying on that money to live on.
Yes, of course.
Which makes life an awful lot harder.
Yes.
For a lot of people.
So now I hear that if you read the news, it says that they've gone into rehabilitation. So rehabilitation is basically a debt restructuring. It goes through the court put a bubble around it so nobody can attack it further, and then the debt is restructured through the court.
Isn't this something that has only recently started being used in Pattaya?
I think it's only been used 2 or 3 times.
Yeah. It's something that was always there, but was really never ever used. All of a sudden, a lot of companies, especially construction companies, are looking at debt restructuring
Well, when you
and saving themselves. It's like the
Yes.
Americans have it as well.
But when you go into rehabilitation, you basically lose control of the development.
Oh, do you?
Yes, yes.
Who
You lose
takes control?
Whoever is appointed as the planner, like the executor or something like that, what you'd call them. So basically, it's a court restructured debt. So everything's transparent. If you're owed money, you have to put your claim into the court. And then the court, the creditors have to vote, and they have to vote on, it's called a planner. There's only, I think, 7 or 8 licensed of them in Thailand.
But surely, excuse me, but in these places where you're talking about thousands of rooms, you must be talking about thousands of people, and each one of them technically is a creditor.
Yes, correct. Correct. So at the point, I mean, we have a couple of clients that have received the full rehabilitation pack. So I believe this particular developer has sent it out to everybody. So now it's a process of the law. Everybody have to show how much money they paid, how much money they're owed. It all has to be restructured through the court.
So do the people who've invested money, do they have a choice whether or not the company stays in this, gets to do this rescheduling and this bubble cover?
Well, what happens is that, from what I see, is that they put a petition into the court to apply for rehabilitation. The court then have to say yes or no. And if they say yes, then there's a further period where you have to submit the planner to the court to show this is the person who is going to try to restructure the debt within a court environment. It's a bit like a bankruptcy, whatever you call him.
Americans have Chapter 7, Chapter 13, which are completely different. One is a protection, which is what this is.
Well, this is a protection, but it's a protection to try to figure out what happens next. So in the worst case, if all the units are finished and they can't pay back all the customers, I would have thought what would happen is that it would all be liquidated. They'd work out who's owed what. Obviously, the secured creditors will win first, something like the bank that has a mortgage on the back of a title deed, and then the creditor, and then the normal creditors come next. And so I would have thought that probably they're not looking at getting all their money back, but they should have a chance of getting something back.
Now, in other projects, I know that years ago there was a law passed that said that when the property went upside down, it couldn't be sold for less than something like 80% of the total outstanding balance to the bank.
Yeah,
Is that
correct.
that's still
Yes.
in effect, yeah?
Yes.
So if ABC Property owes the bank 100 million and it sells for 80 million, the bank gets all the money.
Correct.
And if it's bid for 70 million, that's no good to anyone because they can't buy it because the law prohibits it from being
what
sold.
happens when it goes into public auction, the price is set, and then it goes 3 rounds in public auction. It starts off at 100% of the price set, and then it drops 10% for the next 3 rounds.
All right.
And then if it doesn't sell, it gets removed from public auction. It can then go back in again 4 rounds at the same price, or it can drop. And as the price drops, obviously it's more easier for it to be sold at a better price. So normally when something goes in a public auction, it's not normally sold at the first auction because everybody knows the price drops.
Ah,
That's how it works.
that's how the investors work. So apart from property, what else is busy? I would imagine that with COVID, you must be seeing an awful lot of people spending a lot more time with their spouses, and the old divorce count must be going up.
No, not many divorces. A lot of wills. A lot of people are now thinking about when they get to the end of this life and they want to make sure their assets pass over to their loved ones. So we are, on average, we might get 5 wills a week. We're now averaging about 15 or 20.
Really?
So, yeah.
I mean, I've
quite a
done
lot of
mine
wills.
with you. I'll be straight. I
Yes.
did my will with Magna Carta a long while ago.
Everything goes to me, doesn't it? I
Yes,
seem to remember.
yes. I
Yeah,
believe
that's
that was the piece of paper that was blank that I signed. That's the one.
That's
Yeah.
the one. That's the one.
But looking at wills, if you're living in Thailand or if you've got assets in Thailand, do you need a will in Thailand?
You should have a will. If you don't have a will, there are provisions that, according to the civil and commercial law, that allow your heirs to benefit, but it just gets slightly harder because they have to prove they have the right to benefit under the law.
But what about if somebody has a will, say, in the UK or America or Australia or wherever? Do they still need a will in Thailand?
You should have a will in every country that you have assets.
Really?
Because if you have a will in Thailand and you mention assets in another country, maybe the law in that country is different to Thailand, and that one will might be compromised.
Right. How long does it take you to probate a will? Is that the right word?
Yeah, about 1 month to prepare all the papers, about 3 months to get the court date, and then a 30-day challenge period. So probably between 4 to 6 months from when the person passes away.
So the will's made by the person, he snuffs it,
Yes,
you process it, you
Yes.
send it to the court,
yes.
the court then approves it, but then there's a 30-day delay in case anybody wants to object.
Challenge it. Yes, yes. I mean, like you might have somebody that's left everything to one child, and then you might have a second child that he didn't know about coming to the court and say, hey, that's my dad, he didn't know about me. I think I should also benefit from the will. The chances are he's not going to win, but he's still got the right to challenge.
It gives you a big delay, doesn't it?
Yes.
Wow. Really? There's another story that's hitting the headlines, and I don't know if you know anything about it. Walking Street.
Yes, I've heard
Everybody's
about
favourite den of sin. The neon lights, the glow of Walking Street that we've known for decades. The story is that everything along the waterside is going to be NFG by the end of the year. What do you think?
Well, I've heard that every single year for the last 10 or 15 years, I suppose. But this is the first time where, and again, I can't confirm if it's true because I've just read it like everyone else in the newspapers, but where it says that they're thinking about not issuing licences for Walking Street on that side of the road at the end of this year.
Entertainment licences.
Correct. So that means before, I believe that when they tried to knock it down, they come up against opposition and there was problems according to the law. But now it's gone a different way. If you can't get a licence, so the discos and the go-go bars, if they can't get a licence there, they can't trade.
There's another
If they
thing.
can't trade, they're not going to be there. So it's going to be empty. And then I should imagine it's going to be a lot easier knocking empty buildings down than it is full buildings.
Well, last year they introduced a requirement that they had to connect to the main sewers as opposed to dropping it all into the ocean.
Yes.
Some did, some didn't.
Mm-hmm.
You've got clubs down there. You've got some that claim they've got chanoots. But if I'm right, the actual chanoot is probably only about 4 metres deep from the road. The rest of it, so there's a little bit that has got a chanoot on it,
Yeah.
and then the rest is the build-on bit that's...
Well, that's what people seem to be saying, that there's a lot of illegal extensions out the back. Whether they're illegal or not, I don't know. But you can't have a chanoot over something that's on stilts over a water.
So that's basically how
Yes.
it works.
That basically answers that.
So what do you think? Going to end up with a nice marina along there, or do you think this time next year we're still going to have the glitzy lights?
Well, if you look, Pattaya City Hall's been granted a big budget for Bali High, and they're talking about the tram coming in from the train station in Soi Siam. So you can envisage that will be a very, very nice part of Walking Street if one side of it's down. But then, those businesses have been there a long time.
A lot of businesses, Tony, have suffered because of COVID.
Mm-hmm.
Turnover has been down. I mean,
Sure.
we're one of them. How does it work for lawyers? Are you doing all right?
Yeah, we're doing okay. There's obviously some part of our business which is taking care of the entertainment areas, the bars, the discos. Obviously, that one isn't working so good at the moment. We're doing a lot of wills. We're doing a lot of court cases. A lot of property transfers as well. With regards to property transfers, it seems when COVID first came out, the people that needed to get out of the market fire sold to get out of the market.
Right.
Now you're a year down the line, the people that are still in the market would like to get out but don't need to get out. So there doesn't
Right.
seem to be so many fire sale properties there. It's a bit like I liken it years ago when the pound was 60 to the pound and it dropped to 40. Business dropped. But then when people realised it was going to stay at 40, they realised that they have to start business again. It's just a new. So it's the same here at the moment.
So do you think if tourism returns, which they say there's different guesses,
Yes.
and I'm not even going to use dates because it's not fair, because everybody's being promised weird dates and then it changes and changes and changes.
Mm-hmm.
If the country ends up having most people getting the vaccinations, and if this country accepts vaccination passports from overseas, and if tourism returns, say, by Christmas, how long do you think it's going to be before business gets back to semi-normal?
That's a hard one, Tommy. That's a hard one.
Well,
You've got
you've
to
been here for,
remember-
what, 20 years?
24 now, yeah. It's a hard one because you have to remember it's not okay. So people can now travel to Thailand. So let's say they have a vaccination passport. But these are the same people that haven't had a job for the last year or 2 years. So these are people that haven't got money. So I think that the hardened tourist that comes to Thailand every single year and comes here for the bars and enjoys himself, then you're not going to stop him coming. But I think you're going to stop a lot of families coming because there just isn't going to be the money there. So it's a hard question. Maybe 1 or 2 years if we ever return back to normal.
Because now the city's going over, the new idea is it's going to become a neo-city.
Yes.
So it's less dependent on tourism and is looking at commerce and everything else.
Well, Pattaya's grown up so much over the last 20 years. It's amazing, isn't it? I can remember going down 3rd Road when it was just a field, and Soi 8 was a field, and 7 was a field, and things like that. It's just grown up so big now.
I spoke to the lady that owns the Lek Hotel years ago, and she was telling me that it started off on a bar on Beach Road, and her husband sold it and took the money and built the Lek Hotel, which is 2nd Road.
Okay.
And at the time it was a dirt road, and everybody laughed at them, because I asked her why Mike's Shopping Mall, until quite recently at the back on the 2nd Road, had got rebar sticking out of it, and it looked like it had been half built and then finished. She said nobody expected anybody to ever walk on 2nd Road.
No.
That was the way it was, and it has grown. It's grown a lot.
It was a sleepy fishing village, wasn't it? And it's grown into a great big city.
But it's a city full of condos.
Yes.
So we get back to condos again.
Yes. The condo market that I see at the moment is that you have to have a condo that's built good and is in a good area.
There are about 50 to 60,000 of them for sale.
Yes.
It certainly is a buyer's market. 50 to 60,000 condos for sale.
It's a buyer's market. It's a buyer's market. And unfortunately, if you have a condo in an area where there's loads of them and there's nothing that sets your condo aside from other people's condos, then you're going to have a difficulty selling them. But if you've got a condo in Soi Wongamat or North Shore or something like that, which holds the value, then you're always going to sell it because people want to be there.
If somebody was a condo owner, whether they live here or not, say they've invested in condos, they've got 1 or they've got 10, and they were looking at that as their future, it's pretty obvious they can't sell them unless they give them away. So you reckon within a couple of years they could start looking at getting an income again?
Well, there was always a rental income. I mean, you've got houses. You had your houses rented out. I've got houses. I have my houses rented out. We haven't got them at the moment because there's no market there. But there's always a market when things come back. So again, with the condos, I think what you'll find to begin with is that the rental price will come down. The top dollars that you could get many years ago, I don't think you can get that now.
Right.
I've got a townhouse that I used to rent at 8,500 baht. I've just accepted 7,000 baht, which is like 30-40% discount because it hasn't been rented out for a year.
Just the way it's got to go.
So I'd rather get something for a year than nothing for a year. So I just think that people are going to be able to pick and choose, and until everything comes back. But then again, if Walking Street does happen, if the monorail comes in, if the budget's going to be big and it's going to be great, there's loads of ifs. If gambling was legalised, the town would go through the roof.
Absolutely.
There's many things that could happen which can bring property prices up. It's not all doom and gloom.
So we just got to wait and see.
Yeah, that's it.
Tony from Magna Carta, Tony Justice from Magna Carta, if you want to look them up on the internet, magnacarta.co.th.
Correct.
Is the website, and you can chat with Tony. And if you've got any questions legally, we use Tony on a regular basis, a good pal of mine, and he could become a pal of yours, certainly somebody that you could rely on. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Tommy.
On
Thank you for
Behind the
having me.
Mic. See you again soon.